Technology is the topic. Arlen Miller is back with me here to conclude our series here on technology, which we are inundated with here in the 21st century and will continue to be, right?
Sorry, Matt, I just was checking my Twitter feed. What did you say something?
Did I say something? Were you checking your likes?
Yeah, checking my likes on my Facebook
kind of wondering.
And all of that kind of thing. No, thanks for having me back, Matt. It's good to talk through this idea, and we really want to use this as a teaching opportunity as we look at ourselves, at our heart, and what is in our heart, and as we look at our children and those around us, and how technology is revealing the deeper characters of our heart.
So we said that the best way to spend our time is really on principles that speak to the issue of technology so that our conversation is not stuck in 2017, but the conversation really lets us loose to live in the 21st century. And so we talked about two principles last time. Does it reinforce Christ's view of me? We also looked at purity. Where are we going here today?
The first one that we'll talk about today is a simple principle. Is this a good use of my time? We are called in Ephesians 5 to redeem the time because the days are evil. Now, sometimes it definitely is, right? Think about the efficiencies that have come about.
It multiplies the effect of your time, doesn't it?
Right. Communication and organization and that kind of a thing, it can be a great thing that allows for a wonderful use of time. But at other times, I don't know about you, Matt, but there are times when suddenly I've lost half an hour and I don't know where it went.
Yes, scrolling.
Yeah.
Scrolling.
That Google search just went in directions I did not expect them to.
One more scroll. One more. Let me see one more. Yeah, right. So true.
We have to really, I think, keep our wit about us and think through, okay, how is this technology use affecting me? You know, one area that I always think of and challenge myself on is this idea, can I still get quiet?
Technology will have an effect on us. Our environment has an effect on us, right? And this is part of our environment. And that might be one that we might have an antenna up for is, can I get quiet with Jesus? Am I constantly dogged by the dings and the buzzes and the rattles of my phone? And if somebody comes and taps me on the shoulder, I have to turn around and engage them, right? It is a form of communication that says, hey, right now, right? As opposed to an answering machine, right, that was set up with the premise of, at your convenience, check your messages. Isn't that interesting? And so I think we do have that sense now that, I've just been dinged. I need to respond right away. And that takes the onus of time away from us. Does that make sense?
It does, Matt. It really does. And the other aspect that I start to look at is how is this affecting my relationships with my family, with God, as we mentioned before, but just even with like the physical relationships of family and friends. How is it affecting me? Am I hijacked by the buzz of a phone that at the dinner table I have to get up and answer it?
God brings us along and matures us in Him through that quietness, through that contemplation, through that consideration of the Word, being with Him. And if that could be robbed out of a believer's life, boy, a great deal of harm is done.
And so again, a good check. Is this a good use of my time? And how is this affecting my time?
Let's go into the next principle.
Sure.
Am I being Christ-like with this technology?
As you think of Philippians 1, it says, let your whole lifestyle or conversation be as it becomes the gospel of Christ. Is what I'm doing with my technology reflecting the gospel of Christ?
Because so much of technology is communication, right? And here again, what an opportunity we have with technology to communicate Christ, right? But we need to be discerning with that we're not using it for non-Christ-like ways.
Right, Matt. Think about the power of a Caring Bridge site and how much comfort and encouragement and prayer that has brought to certain situations. And then also contrast that with an email or a text. You can say something off the cuff without pausing and thinking through it and can do great harm. I mean, all of the principles of James 3 come into bear, about the power of the tongue. Only now it's captured and it's forever because it's on technology.
Yeah.
There was a...
filed away in cyberspace.
Filed away.
Never to be taken back.
Right. There was a great story I always like to think about with Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln, when he was president, would get all kinds of correspondence. And he would, some of it was not so nice. He was president during a very rough time in our nation's history. And it was said that when he was going to reply to someone in a not so nice manner, he would take that letter, he'd write it out, and then he'd put it in the drawer of his desk. And he'd wait 24 hours before he would send it.
He would let it sit on his heart.
And many times, they found it because those letters were still there. He never sent those. How wise that would be if we knew our tendency was to send to something maybe not quite so nice, if we would just take a deep breath, calm, wait, and really reflect, should I say that?
Yeah.
Because once it's said, it's forever.
For myself, that's difficult to do, to act and to react in a godly manner all the time. And with technology, we are able to express communication in a reactive mode, which I think then raises this issue of, am I being Christ-like?
Most definitely.
Okay, the last principle.
Last principle, Matt, is am I being socially appropriate?
Immediately as you say that, I think we have spheres of audiences, don't we? My wife and I, my children, then we have an extended family, right? And we move those outward to church family, to larger denominational family, to community, right? We have all of these, and there's appropriate interactions at each of those that aren't all the same.
Right.
Right?
But what we do, right, is we start to blur those lines.
Yeah.
And suddenly, by my Facebook feed, I can be in your living room.
Well, who's my audience?
Right.
That's the thing. And we can pass it on, copy and paste, on it goes. And pretty soon, we've reached an audience that we didn't have in our head when we wrote the post or when we took the picture.
And if I'm not careful, because I can now see what you do in your living room, I can start to impose my thought about what that's supposed to be upon you and start to make judgments and say, what's he doing there? He shouldn't be doing that. And that's a place that I don't think we're really called to go necessarily.
Okay, so let's redeem this thing, because I think the gospel does redeem it. So this is the way it is. Okay, to your point, we now live in one another's living rooms in a sense, okay? We peer right into the lives, in the very personal lives, the private vacations, right? The private moments that are shared outwardly. And maybe this now raises the importance of love that we would have for one another. It certainly requires a great deal of grace as we interact with one another.
Ask yourself a simple question, before you post that online, a simple question. Is this appropriate to share to the world? Or is this something that should be kind of treasured and just savored in our own intimate circle?
Am I exaggerating hardship?
Sure.
Is something that happens. Or am I exaggerating bliss?
Right.
And I think that has to do with social appropriateness.
Yeah, and if you take that to an extreme, we start to think that everyone's life lives in this exaggerated world of bliss or hardship, and we only see the extremes, and then we start to expect that upon ourselves.
Which goes back to the original lens of, is it real or unreal?
Right.
We blur these lines of real and unreal. Right, which I always think a classic example, right, are Pinterest posts or pictures, right, that this is the way it looks, this is the way this functions, this is the way, and we might like, oh, my kitchen needs to look like that, or isn't that a great idea? When in reality, there's a harried mess behind the camera that isn't captured.
Right.
Arlen, we have a lot of resources at the ACCFS that are designed to help families and help parents as it concerns technology. What are a few of those?
The one that we most quickly turn to is what we call our family technology plan. And we'll post it on site here where we post this podcast. But the family technology plan is a document that will really walk through, as a family, you think through, how is technology affecting my family, and how do I proactively set a plan, age appropriate, to grow and teach these principles into my children's lives.
And so this plan, as I'm hearing you explain it, isn't just a plan to protect in a sense of keeping us from the harm, but it's actually a dynamic plan that allows us to grow, right? It's used to say, okay, let's use technology since it's a part of our life. Let's use technology to grow in Christ-likeness according to some of these principles.
Yeah. And to teach and to discuss these principles with our children and learn from there, right? The first part will kind of lay out some of these principles, and then it will ask you some very simple questions, right? How many devices do you have in your home? What kind of standard do you want to have for your family time? Do you want to have set family time? How long should it be? What does it look like? Should your kids be having technology when their friends are over? Or is that kind of a no space area there where it should be just about the relationship there? And
what is proper etiquette when it comes to the phone use?
Right.
How do we help each other understand that etiquette and live within it?
And then what I like to see with a really healthy plan, it is age-based, and you see growth. My daughter, when she was young, it was completely appropriate to have training wheels on that bike. Now, when she's 16, I don't think we're going to be walking around the block with her while she's riding her bike.
Right.
We're going to give her more and more freedom.
And you'll have weaned her.
We'll have weaned her, and we'll have talked it through and discussed, hopefully, that those principles are in place so that when she accidentally comes across something or is tempted to want to send that nasty text or whatever is happening in 10 years from now in technology world, she'll be thinking through the scriptural principles behind that and whether that's appropriate or not.
Arlen, I think it's exciting to think that God would use technology to draw us to himself. I mean, that speaks to the power of God. And I think that's come out here in our conversation. That God would use technology to expose our hearts, and technology is a bit of a lens for that. And then to see that allow this technology to be a way for you to be Christ-like, which I think is wonderful redemption to this topic of technology. And with that, and to our listeners, thanks for being with us. As Arlen mentioned, we do have resources on the website. If you go to accounseling.org and the /technology, you'll see a plethora of resources there. And we always encourage, if any are not on our email list, to sign up. There's a place there on the website where you can sign up to receive monthly emails from our agency. We would love to have you part of the ministry in that way.